Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Teacher Joseph podcast. And today we're going to talk about the king. And we're talking about the king because of his role in appointing the government. So, the king has overall responsibility for the government of the UK, but his power is a ceremonial power. It's not a political power. So he can't say, I don't like this prime minister, so I'm not going to appoint him, or, I don't like this man, so I'm not going to give him a title. The government and the royals, they work together. The best way of seeing the king as the government's most senior spokesperson. Okay, so he does all the ceremonial part. He appoints the prime ministers. He makes people lords and ladies, and he also appoints his own people as princes and these things. So his role is ceremonial. So when a new prime minister comes along, the king just does his ceremony and makes that person prime minister. The king does not have any political views. He's a little bit like a president of a country. That's the best way to see him. Okay, so he does the appointments, that's his job, and he doesn't give any speeches or personal thoughts about the matter. The king also is responsible for receiving the resignations of prime ministers when they decide that they don't want to be prime minister anymore. But again, it's all ceremonial. So what happens is the actual members of parliament and the party who's in power, they decide who the next prime minister will be. So for a long time now, we've had a conservative government, and that's been David Cameron was the prime minister, and then it became Theresa May, then it became Boris Johnson, and then it became Liz Truss, and very soon there's going to be a new one, which we'll know about next week. So they arrange it all internally, and then they say to the king, okay, do your thing. And the king, he has an interview with them and appoints them. We never know what happens during that appointment. We don't know what's discussed. We don't know how it actually works. I guess they have to sign something, or the king has to have a special blessing for them, maybe, because remember, our king is also the head of the church. I don't know quite how it works, but the king, he does the ceremonial part. And likewise, when a prime minister resigns, he has to go to the king's office and the king releases him from his appointment. But it's completely ceremonial. During Brexit, many people didn't want Brexit to happen. And many people were hoping that the Queen would have a personal view and maybe she would stop the whole thing. I'm sure in history they do actually have power to do that, but they never ever use it, and it would cause a huge problem in our democratic system if they did that, because the king, his responsibility is to only affirm the democratic process. It's not to change it or to say, I have the last word. He's not allowed to do that. About our new prime minister, so as I mentioned a moment ago, we had David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and now a new one. So these all belong to the same Conservative Party. And that's why there's not going to be any general election with the people. But some people think that they've made a bit of a mess of it. I mean, after all, a prime minister for 40 days doesn't really show that they know what they're doing. So they're still not having an election, but sooner or later they will need to have one, and it's possible that the public will vote for a different political party. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So next week we will see another Conservative Party leader. And at that point, Liz Truss will go to the king and resign. And the new leader, whoever he or she might be, will have to go to the king and be appointed. And usually they go on the same day. So it's interesting. We never see what happens. The cameras are not allowed inside those meetings. So we don't know what the king says. Because the king is head of the church as well as head of the government, I'm guessing he gives them some kind of religious rites or blessing. I don't know. I don't quite know what the status quo is, what the normal thing is that they do. So I'm not able to answer that. But certainly by the end of next week, Liz Truss will be at the King's office to resign, and the new Prime Minister will be there to be appointed. And we will never know what is said in those meetings. And that's it. Well, I hope that's giving you a little bit more information about the king. His role is purely ceremonial. He can't do anything without the government's permission, and the government can't do anything without his permission. So he's there just to affirm democracy, basically, in a strange way. It's a historical thing. It doesn't have any standing or political power these days. I say these days because at one point in history it had, and it's unclear if that could ever be used in a democratic process. Because if I vote for someone and then the king comes along and says, I don't like that person, it wouldn't be very democratic, would it? So I guess his role is just to go along with what the people say, I suppose. And if that's the case, what's the point of having him there then? Well, many people are asking that question, and it seems that in the coming years, they will begin to find a different role for the king. Most other European countries have removed the king from the church, so I guess they could do that, and they could remove him from the government process. But because the royal family generates so much tourism, I'm guessing that they won't be very quick to do that. There we are. Well, that's the thing about the king. Okay, so see you all soon. Bye.